Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Arachne. Arachne is an assassin who is seen solely in the jungle role, and excels in single target damage at the expense of her effectiveness in teamfights. If you want a jungler who's going to carry you all the way to rank 1, Arachne's not it. But if you want a jungler who can absolutely crush games before the 10-minute mark to get yourself out of lower rankings, Arachne's for you. Build-wise, Arachne is quite flexible, being a basic attack-based god. I personally find that going crit is still viable enough to keep her damage absurd and press on your advantage to try and make the enemy team surrender, although going into a vital amplifier build with kin size and penetration is the more sensible route if you're looking to actually finish out games as Arachne and not just try to force the enemy team to surrender. And that final item there is totally flexible. It can be something like a Bloodforge, Shadow Drinker, Erendite, and so on. Relics wise, you absolutely need Blink, and you guessed it, you need beads too. Blinking on your opponents is basically the only way to get in as Arachne, and beads, well, as a basic attacker, you're going to need to cleanse some CC if you want to kill people. Some secret hidden tech for you guys is going Shell second instead of beads in situations where the enemy team has walls like Ymir or Umoja walls. Grabbing Phantom Shell to walk right through them is sometimes the only way you can be effective as Arachne. Shard wise, just go Wing Shard. Let's start understanding what makes Arachne so good in a one-on-one by explaining her passive. Arachne's basic attacks deal bonus damage based on the target's missing health, and this bonus damage stacks with things like crits and vital amplifier. Not a lot to say other than that Arachne does damage, like a lot of it. And even if this passive wasn't a factor, as Arachne you don't really have much choice other than seeing through trades and simply fighting it even if the trade doesn't go your way immediately, since Arachne's damage increases as your fights continue. Let's explore why Arachne can take extended trades and make use of vital amplifier with her first ability. Upon activation, Arachne enhances her next basic attack within 5 seconds. When Arachne lands this enhanced basic attack, it will deal damage over time to the affected target and begin healing herself over time too. It's a very basic way to get some damage on your intended target while sustaining yourself a bit too. I'm actually going to move straight into Arachne's second ability since they share essentially the same exact strengths and weaknesses and are used together every single time Arachne wants to fight. In Arachne's second ability, she again enhances her next basic attack within 5 seconds. This time though, she enhances the next 3 basic attacks with an extremely high attack speed stem, and if all 3 basic attacks hit the same target, the target is stunned. And yes, you can and will stack your first and second abilities together for bonus damage. Attack speed, self-sustain, and CC all in one. Although, with how the ability works, keep in mind that you need to hit 3 basic attacks in a row on a single target while the ability is active. If you hit more than one target during the ability, you're not going to stun anybody. As I'm sure you've already noticed, this extremely potent combo as a whole has some serious downsides. First off, Arachne needs to be in melee range to get any of this started, hence why Blink is seen on her every single game. She simply needs to be directly in people's faces to function. So there are a few things your opponent can do to try to stop you here. Of course, hard CC and movement abilities are a problem for Arachne. So as Arachne, you really need to know the capabilities of who you're jumping on before you jump on them. For instance, against someone like Ra, no thoughts needed, just brain off and left click. Whereas someone like Neat, you have both her root and backflip to worry about, so you don't want to burn any of your tools outside of your main 2-1 combo before she fires her root or more importantly backflip on you. A good answer to a lot of these tools is Arachne's third ability. Arachne fires forward a web which will stop on the first wall, minion, or god hit. Even a small edge of a wall will make the web stop, so be careful about that. Arachne can have up to 3 webs total at any given time, and when the web hits a god or a minion directly, or a god triggers a web by walking into it, it will spawn 2 pet spiders which will basically attack the nearest enemy, prioritizing gods. More importantly, the web will slow the affected god and leave a trail behind them, this trail granting Arachne movement speed and making her immune to slows. So now, on gods who have hard CC or movement abilities, you want to blink on them to force out that CC or movement ability, then use your movement speed from items and your speed buff to catch back up to them to get in range for the web, and then you chase them down from there. And then of course, against gods who are lacking in hard CC or movement ability, you simply have to get in range to 3 them, and then chase from there. Meaning that if you see a god like Ra, or gods with more simple dashes which don't go for walls, you can let the webs follow them. They're very easy for Arachne to just chase down. 2 major flaws with this. First off is the most common issue, minions. All your intended target needs to do to avoid you is stand behind or inside their own minions, and this works twofold. As one way, they avoid the web, and 2, they try to make you accidentally hit a minion with your 2-1 combo. Because remember, all you need to do is hit one basic attack on a minion by accident, and your 2-1, if they were active, are both useless. This means that you need to exercise caution when ganking an enemy who still has their whole minion wave there. This is something you usually want to do anyways as a jungler since minion damage is pretty nasty in the early game, but while other junglers want a weakened wave, Arachne wants no wave there if she can get it, so try to be patient while ganking them and see if you can pull off a gank with no minions there. If the minion situation is unavoidable though, just meter out your abilities instead. Hold on to your 1 and space out your 3 in basic attacks with your second ability to make sure everything lands where it needs to. And of course, as soon as you get a clear shot with your 3 on your intended target, use it. That brings up another problem though. All you need is a big ol' mini head like an enemy warrior or guardian to stand in front of your intended target, and now you have literally no chance of ever catching up to your intended target, since you can't web them. Still though, this is Arachne's most versatile ability yet, so let's touch on a few other use cases. First off, at the start of the match, it gives Arachne one of the best clears in the game. Since you can have 3 webs total, you can actually just spam out your 3 at the start of the match on a camp, back to base, then come back with full mana and a 4th web once you get your other 3 triggered. It's a lot of damage. Mind you, how you're going to set this all up will change depending on what the meta is at that time. For instance, at the start of the season, when the start was different, Arachne players had to place their webs in between the XP and speed camp. It can be a little confusing to figure out the absolute most effective way to do this in any given meta start at first, but once you get it down, it's very simple and effective. Secondly, it's hardly a dash, leap, or teleport, but that web that comes out when you fire the ability does give Arachne slow immunity and movement speed, so it can still be the difference maker in certain situations. Especially when it comes to dealing with abilities like Ymir, Poseidon, and Ganesh ultimate, or smaller abilities like Amma's and Kab and Anubis' third abilities, easily able to trot over them like they weren't there at all. But when it comes to immuning certain abilities and closing the gap on your target, Arachne's third ability pales in comparison to her ultimate. Arachne becomes CC immune and collabs onto her web, becoming completely untargetable once in the web and gaining a huge 40% movement speed bonus. Arachne is able to prime her first and second abilities while on this web. Arachne can stay in the web for up to 5 seconds, but can end the ability early by reactivating it. When the ability ends, Arachne will land in the AoE that's visible for the entire duration of the ability, this ability being able to go over walls as well. She will deal immense damage to all enemies in this area and spawn an area on the ground which shares the exact same properties as Arachne's third ability, movement speed and slow immunity for Arachne and slows her enemies. Let's start off with how you want to use it during ganks in the early and mid game. Essentially, when you have access to this ability, most of what we've been talking about thus far goes out the window. Still, you always want to start out your ganks by blinking, and you always want to keep your ultimate in reserve during a gank for a multitude of reasons. For one, avoiding huge CC or damaging abilities, such as a Poseidon Kraken, a Cernunnos ultimate, and so on. Arachne can use her ultimate on reaction to those things to completely avoid them and then continue comboing from there. Then, she can also use it to easily catch back up to enemies who have used their movement abilities. Trying to run back up and through your enemies after they dash or leap is possible, but it's nowhere near as effective as leaping on them and dealing a bazillion damage and then slowing them. So as with most junglers, you really need to know your opponent's characters as much as your own, so that you're always using your ultimate at the best time possible. Some characters will require you to immune their ultimate to kill them, and others have exceptional escapes that you'll need to use your ultimate to catch back up to. It all just depends on who you're trying to kill. As for team fights, well, this is where Arachne is by far her most difficult. You may have thought by now, what's Arachne supposed to do in a proper 5 vs 5 team fight? Well, she really just waits around for an opportunity to blink on someone, do the combo we've been talking about thus far, and either finish them off with the ultimate or run away with the ultimate if you're in trouble. Alternatively, Arachne can also follow up off of her teammates engaged with her ultimate. Ranged, with lots of damage and a slow, it's a good follow-up. The only problem is Arachne gets herself in there too, so when you dunk on the enemy backline, which the enemy team does see coming by the way, you better be sure you can kill someone in the backline or rely on your team to come help you out a bit. That's generally why Arachne plays more selfish in the late game. Sit around and wait for all of their 9 players to do the heavy lifting. Then you blink onto the enemy backline and try to eviscerate someone and finish them off with the ultimate. That's how Arachne is usually played, but when it comes to squishy targets who are less mobile, or when the rest of your team is doing the heavy lifting, don't forget about the possibility of getting more active in the team fight with your ultimate. Speaking of getting active in a team fight, some combos with Arachne. 1, 2, blink, basic attacks. Then if they have no movement abilities, 3 them as soon as they're stunned. And if they do have a movement ability, wait for them to use it before using your 3. On targets who have hard CC or movement abilities on cooldown, 3, 1, 2 as your approach, and basic attacks. In a late game fight or on easy targets who lack CC or movement ability, ult, 1, 2 while in the ult, stun, 3, basic attacks. 1, 2, blink, basic attacks, 3 when they're stunned, ultimate, basic attack. For ability leveling, you want to level your 3 at level 1 for that special start I mentioned earlier, then your 2 at level 2, and your 1 at level 3. From there you max your 1, your 2, then your 3. Leveling the ultimate whenever you can, although it's also smart to put a level into your ult at level 5, but skip leveling it until your 1 and 2 are maxed. It's just a personal preference since the ultimate does do decent damage, but the 1-2 is your bread and butter. When talking about Arachne, stats are not in your favor. She's generally considered the worst assassin in the game due to her fragile combos and complete lack of teamfight presence. Or at the very least just the fact that she has to nearly kill herself just to get some area burst damage out there and a meager slow. Most assassins can come close to how good Arachne is at singling out targets, and yet have far, far better ultimates for teamfighting. Think how Susanoo or Hunbat's ultimates compare to Arachne's. Yet she's persistently topping the charts in terms of win rate, so what's going on here? Well, it goes back to what I said just now. Other characters get close to how well Arachne does in one-on-ones, but nobody is better. Unless you're a teamfight hunter or mage, you will not beat Arachne if it's a straight one-on-one. So get yourself in a casual or low-level ranked game where everyone's playing for themselves, and Arachne's just going to either fall around the enemy jungler all game and make it so they can never farm their jungle or successfully gank, or more importantly, single out the worst enemy player and just kill them over and over again until she's way too strong and her weaknesses fall to the wayside as she starts giving that treatment to everyone else on the enemy team too. And trust me, after almost 10 years of playing Smite, the easiest way to win ranked and casual matches alike is to get the enemy team tilted. And there's nothing more tilting than seeing an enemy Arachne who's 4 levels up because your mid laner died to her 5 times in a row and invaded your jungler to put them behind too. So she's not a sure thing to win you a match, especially against a good group of players who know how to, ward and peel for each other. And if she can't get off the ground and get ahead, she can easily be the reason you lose the match thanks to her poor teamfight presence. But she could just as easily be the reason you win every ranked match at 10 to 15 minutes in. That's all I have on Arachne for now. Thanks for watching.